I finally got a chance to sit down and play Temtem. Here are my first impressions. A heads up, I will be making a lot of comparisons to Pokemon as Temtem draws several striking similarities to Pokemon that can help contrast the two series to see where they are the same, where they are different, and help identify what one does better than the other and why. My goal is not to bash Pokemon to raise Temtem, but more to appraise both side by side in order to more clearly depict what Temtem is all about and what it has to offer. If you played a Pokemon game before, then you will be right at home. Temtem breathes fresh air into a stagnating genre, reminding me why I invested my time in it to begin with. The magic of exploring a new world with monsters that you train yourself, and grow closer to in the process, is reinvigorated within Temtem, a magic that has been waning in Pokemon for many years now. It starts off rather disconcerting, seeming to vindicate all of the Temtem haters who dismiss it as nothing more than a cheap Pokemon knockoff. You start off in a small town with your mom, father is mysteriously absent, you get a Pokedex, there's a professor, there's 3 starter Pokemon, there's a rival, and you fight him. This is basically how every Pokemon game started ever. A few neat differences are that the starters aren't the hackneyed fire, water, grass triangle, and are instead Crystal, aka Steel, Mental, aka Psychic, and Melee, aka Fighting. Oh, and your rival completely pushes your shit in on your first encounter, regardless of the starter you pick. If you're able to beat him, let me know down below. The game doesn't start off too hot, but my fears were steadily put to rest the further I advanced, especially with regards to the combat. Combat, while appearing similar to Pokemon at first glance, is significantly more engaging and rewarding, thanks entirely to Temtem's stamina-based system. Pokemon uses a PowerPoint or PP based system that is almost entirely inconsequential. Most attacks have absurd amounts of PP, which means you will never risk running out and you can just spam any attack to your heart's content. The more powerful attacks are an exception, as they range from 5 to 8 PP, but in regular campaign you don't gain access to these types of attacks until much later into the game. Temtem took a different and far more superior approach. They utilize a stamina-based system that is built upon many different mechanics that all come together to craft a deep, strategic-based combat system that rewards competent play. Each Temtem at the start of battle gains access to full stamina. Each attack requires a set amount of stamina in order to be executed. At the end of each turn you gain a tiny amount of stamina. If you have stamina but not enough for the attack, the deficit can be repaid by bleeding into your health. The more stamina owed, the more damage you accrue. This is called overexerting your Temtem, and it introduces a great element of risk/reward. If your stamina is low, you can either choose to attack with a weak move, rest to regain more stamina for the next turn, or go all out with a stronger attack. This has major repercussions, however. It's not like Pokemon where you can just spam the same thing over and over. You gotta think. If you decide to use an attack that you don't have enough stamina for, not only will you hurt yourself in the process, but your Temtem will be unable to act in your next turn. This is where a significant amount of strategy comes into play, and it's extremely satisfying once you get the hang of it. This system is primarily what sets Temtem apart from Pokemon. The attacks in this game, called techniques, are also interesting. The type-based gameplay from Pokemon remains the same: normal hits, super effective hits for double damage, and not very effective for half damage, as well as stab. An interesting new addition is the hold mechanic. Some attacks require the Temtem to be active for a certain amount of turns before the attack can be used. The number of turns is signified by the number of grayed out bars on the attack. There's also a mechanic called technique synergy. Pokemon dabbled in this ever so slightly with the pledge attacks, but Temtem takes it to a whole new level. Technique synergy focuses on the types of the creatures. If you achieve a synergy, it will give your attacks additional effects, which again rewards you for proper team building and team composition. Earlier I mentioned exploration, which Temtem actually has in great abundance. Pokemon used to allow you to explore as well, but lately the games are nothing but corridor simulators. Spikemuth from Sword and Shield is quite literally an empty hallway, and it's not the only example of extremely linear, thoughtless, lazy world building. It makes the world feel small. Temtem on the other hand feels expansive, open, and large in size. Before you even fight the first gym, you have the opportunity to actually explore many different areas, and so far I haven't seen any artificial roadblocks that Pokemon is infamous for. Sword and Shield introduced the escape rope as a key item, which is a really cool idea, but you never had an excuse to use it because Sword and Shield literally has no exploratory merits. Sword and Shield is a straight line from beginning to end, a corridor simulator. In Temtem, I've already used the escape rope several times. I've had to back out of locations because my team was beaten down and I needed to regroup, reheal, restock, and charge back in head first. This is the magic I was referring to that Pokemon used to have, and that Temtem has rediscovered. The difficulty in this game is fantastic. Sword and Shield made experience share mandatory, which basically shattered any semblance of genuine difficulty in that game. In Temtem, not only is experience share not mandatory, but the devs even threw shade at the idea of using experience share at all, referring to it as a coward's cloak. which is just simply amazing. The battles against some of the tougher Temtem tamers are very thought-provoking. You can't just run into a battle and expect to spam the A button to come out on top. That may work in Pokemon, but Temtem requires actual strategy to emerge victorious. Many of the more difficult tamers have full teams of 6, like the evil team boss whom you encounter before the first gym. This means you must remain vigilant and to be smart about your resource management, placing additional demands on you, which is a foreign concept in Pokemon. Items, while completely broken in Pokemon, are seemingly a necessity in order to take down some of the harder tamers. You are also not flooded with cash like you are in Sword and Shield. The game doesn't just hand you 30,000 in cash to start off. You have to earn everything yourself, and you have to be careful with how you manage your resources, as they are not infinite. I found myself alarmingly low on cash, and I had to blow through all of my items to simply conquer the first gym leader. This also incentivizes traveling the world as you come across many useful items strewn about, to help mitigate bank expenses. The game, while impressive, is not infallible. I can't say much about the story aspect as I have not completed the game yet, but so far it has about as much depth as your typical Pokemon game. The pool of Temtem encountered in the beginning feels small, as I would come across these same species again and again. The type distribution is also uneven. There are a lot of wind types, aka flying types, in the beginning, which basically makes an electric Temtem mandatory in order to score super effective hits. Some types aren't available at all, like fire Tems for example. It also takes an insanely long time for Tems to evolve. In Pokemon they evolve when they hit a certain level. In Temtem they only evolve after gaining a certain amount of levels. This does give you the opportunity to use each Temtem for a while since they don't evolve at predetermined levels, which I like honestly, and it contributes to an increased difficulty, but it's still way too long. My guys are in their 30s and I haven't evolved a single Tem yet. The human models are not that great, one of the few things that Sword and Shield does right. The characters are also rather uninteresting, dull, and forgettable. The Temtem themselves seem solid. People criticize the designs, especially when compared to Pokemon, but Pokemon has had its fair share of stinkers and weak design elements as well. Pokemon does have stronger overall designs though. People also rip into the graphics. I feel it looks pretty good, especially compared to Sword and Shield. Nothing in Temtem so far looks as terrible as the wild area. The Wind Waker style aesthetic complements the game nicely and makes it feel comfy and inviting. Temtem does share many similarities with Pokemon, but has enough going for it to distinguish itself and to stand on its own. I'm currently working on my own Sword and Shield review as well as a full-fledged Temtem review, so stay tuned for those. With all that being said, thanks for watching you guys.